Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and today we're going to talk about the Kim Potter trial, which just wrapped up. I'm here with Estefania,
Hello, guys. How are
our,
you?
our talented journalist, with a master's degree from the University of Miami.
That is correct. It's all about the you, they say.
So we're going to talk. So Kim Potter just got found guilty, and if you're not familiar with the case, this happened in April 11th of 2021. So, and you can see the video; it's out there. So they were arresting a guy. Who was it that they were
Dante
arresting?
Wright. During a traffic stop, they were doing this traffic stop, and Dante Wright was in the car. That was what happened.
And he had like an outstanding warrant for his arrest or something like that.
Correct. Yes.
So once they ran his information, found out there was a warrant, they wanted to take him into custody.
And he resisted, they said, when they stopped him.
So he
and
resisted arrest.
Yeah.
Was he trying to get away or fighting or wrestling with the cops?
It wasn't even getting away. It was the fact I think he didn't like the way the cops were coming at him. And like you see in the video, it was just a little messy the way it was. Like his door was open, and it wasn't even like the door was shut, like, or with a window usually when past incidents. So the door was open, and he was just there sitting, and they were just like talking back and forth, and he didn't want to get up, and that's when the whole incident occurred with the taser and then the gun. When Kim Potter's talking about the taser, she says, "I'll tase you," and taser before she fired her handgun. So she definitely mistaken her handgun with the taser with the handgun and shot one bullet. She only shot one bullet, and that's when the car started to go a little forward, because I think
Was he in the car or was he on the ground when?
so it was like half body there, like, if that makes sense. If the door was opened, he was like sitting, and like the leg was out, and then I think one of the right leg was in.
Oh, so
on the gas pedal.
what was this? His foot was on with the brake pedal still.
Yes, or gas pedal. Yes, the
And
gas
so
pedal.
when he got shot, then his foot came off, and you said the car started rolling forward.
And that's when you hear Kim Potter saying, "Oh, I shot him," and like you see clearly in the video that the other cops were kind of like, "Oh Lord," like they knew what was gonna happen in the next few days and stuff like that. But it was just like upsetting to see the fact that a trained police officer mistaken
She
her
was a
gun.
26-year veteran too.
Correct, 26, and she had 19 years in training with the taser. So she had that training. So I did notice that you said you had experience with the guns, and you said that sometimes you need to go back in training just in case.
Yeah. So the reality is, and I have friends in local police force, guys that I train with personally, and you may, if you ever seen the videos and the interview, the Second Amendment documentary we did with John Dufresne of KineticConsulting.net, Mocha Bear Actual, as we know him. He trains a lot of police officers, and like one of our local police forces where I live, I'm not going to name which one, but they get 4 hours of firearms training for the whole entire year. And usually what that amounts to is them going to the range and training with paper targets, which are stationary. They're not moving, they're not shooting at you, and it's not a kind of a real world force on force. And so every year they have to qualify for whatever pistol that they carry, rifle or shotgun that they have to have. And because I train a lot, and I personally fire tens of thousands of rifle 5.56 rounds and 9mm rounds, and typically shooting is a perishable skill. If you don't practice on a consistent basis, what tends to happen, especially with a pistol, is when you're holding the pistol, and especially when you're stressed, your natural instinct, if you don't practice enough, is to pull hard back on the trigger. When you do that, your red dot or your iron sights are going to dip down and to the left typically when you're pressing on it. And that's why a lot of times you see in police shootings is that the officer gets nervous because he's never had anybody shooting at him before, because he's never done any force-on-force training with non-lethal training munitions like the UTM rounds that I train with John and some of the other guys I train with. And so it's a whole other dimension, because if you're just shooting at a paper target, it's easy to be calm and be relaxed. But when you got rounds coming at you and somebody's shooting at you and you've never experienced this before, your heart rate goes up, you get nervous, you tense up. And if you haven't practiced this, which almost all law enforcement, and they never do any force-on-force training, and that's why when these guys get into actual gunfights themselves, you'll see them empty their magazines trying to hit a suspect and not even hit the guy once, and then end up oftentimes hitting an innocent person because all the rounds that they sent down range. And so with somebody being in the police force, you think with 26 years, and if she's only annually qualifying, which is a lot of these agencies do, and we see their targets down the range, because I've been on the range with these guys, and just like John says, he says most police I would not want shooting near or around me. And if you ever train with CQB, close quarters battle, where you're going in the shoot house, you're doing things with team-based CQB, you have to know where your barrel is at all times. Even though you're using non-lethal rounds, you train with all this. And if the police aren't training with this and they get into a stress situation, that's why they shoot a lot of bullets. And they oftentimes don't hit the suspect, or they hit the suspect and they hit other people just because they haven't been trained properly. And everything is budget driven. And if there's no money in the budget for it, they're not going to get it. And that's why I am a firm believer in that, because I think the stats back it up too. I think it's like when you compare like police officers versus people that have concealed carry license, that a police officer's, I think, is more than 3 times more likely to shoot an innocent person versus a concealed carry. And it's just because of training. Because people that love guns like I do and train a lot like I do, it gets to become a part of you. You become so familiar with the gun. You're familiar with the texture of it. It literally becomes like an actual appendage of your body. And I train pistol and rifle and transitioning back and forth between the two if there's a malfunction or whatever. And grabbing a taser or grabbing your gun when you're trying to grab the taser, that is just somebody that hasn't trained properly, because it's all budget driven. And on top of that, something we were talking about earlier off camera is that Kim obviously didn't look like she was in shape, doesn't look like she ever exercised, she's overweight, and she's been in the police force. She's probably, I assume, in her 40s now at this point.
Yeah, she's currently 49.
What's 49?
Yeah, she's 49, so she's been.
So 49 years old, you don't exercise, your diet's going to tend to suck, you're going to have a lot of brain fog, your sensory acuity is not going to be high, maybe she was tired, stressed out, hadn't been getting much sleep or whatever. And if she didn't practice enough, and it's understandable how something like that could happen. It's a tragedy, it sucks, and so she just recently got found guilty. But somebody like me who trains a lot, like I'm 51, and so I know if I don't take care of myself, if I'm not having the green juice, if I'm not exercising, and I goof around for a week or so, it's like I'm going to be getting brain fog, and I can tell mentally I'm just not going to be that sharp. And if you got somebody who's a police officer that's not taking care of herself, it's understand. And then the fact that she's not getting the proper training,
Yeah.
You can see, you feel bad for her, but I mean, at the end of the day, she pulled her gun and shot the guy, and he lost his life. And we were talking about the truck driver who got sentenced to 110 years. We're a nation of laws, and the law is the law. Lady Justice has the blindfold on, and the scales of justice are supposed to be impartial and blind. And so the law says what the law says.
That is true. Federal law or any law, you have to follow it.
And ignorance of the law, I didn't know, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, she pulled her gun, she shot the guy instead of pulling her taser. And like I said, that's just lack of training, sloppy training, probably, budget driven, especially with all the defund the police nonsense that's going on the last few years. It's, that just makes the training that the police get even worse. And so what happens is you get police officers showing up and not knowing how to handle situations, not knowing how to handle their weapon properly. I think like what John was saying was that a gun is a low use, high consequence tool. And if you don't train, especially like with force on force in the shoot house, like we train with, where you actually have other people hiding in there somewhere, could be behind a couch, could be behind a bookcase, could be hiding in a corner. You just don't know where they're at, and it's dead quiet, and you're methodically opening doors and clearing rooms and pieing into the room and hiding as much as of your body as possible so you can see the bad guy before they see you, and you can put rounds on target and take them out. You get, and then because there are other times that you're going to go in a room and you're not going to know where they are, and they're going to see you because they know what door you're going to come through, and you start hearing the rounds impacting the walls around you. And because I go up against guys that are better shooters than me, and I go up against a lot of guys that just simply aren't, and they get nervous and they start shooting a lot of rounds because they're trying to hit me first, because it stings when you get hit, and you don't want to get hit, obviously. Even though it's a simulated gunfight, it's the closest thing you're going to get to the real thing. And so I remember when I was taking John's weaponized geometry class, and I was clearing this room, and there was this guy I didn't know. I just met him. I'd never seen him before. And you could tell he got nervous, and he was emptying his magazine trying to hit me. And the rounds kept hitting the wall, and I couldn't tell where the dude was at. And finally I was able to see him, and one shot took him out.
Oh, wow.
But he emptied his magazine trying to hit me. It was because he got nervous and his heart's beating fast, and you have to get under stress like that. So if you do get into a real world gunfight, you draw your weapon, you put your dot where it's supposed to be, and you calmly, easily ease the trigger back so the dot stays on target until the trigger breaks, and then the round goes off. And like I was saying earlier, what happens in those situations when people don't train with force on force is they get nervous, they squeeze the gun tighter, they pull the trigger tighter, and it makes the gun dip. And so each time they pull the trigger, the gun is dipping, and by the time the trigger goes off, you're not on the target anymore. So when the bullet comes out of the gun, you don't hit the person.
Nah, and then you may hit something else or some other person, like you said.
And so people that know what they're doing and that have trained competently, that's especially when you do a weaponized geometry class. The thing that was surprising to me is how few times I actually fired just because I always got a hit. And that's just the result of good training. And that's what you want. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for all the rounds that come out of your weapon. And you got to make sure what's behind what you're shooting at. Because bullets don't always stop, even when you're using hollow point rounds, which are designed to open up and reduce, in other words, give all the force of the impact of the bullet to what you're hitting. And so the bullet opens up, and the idea is that it stays in them, but that doesn't always happen. The bullets will go through people. And if there's somebody behind them, even if you took out the bad guy, if the bullets go through them and you hit an innocent person, you're going to jail. If you shoot at somebody and you miss them and you hit an innocent person, you're going to jail. So there's high consequences for those things. And that's why the gun is a last resort. But if you're going to have one, you need to train properly. And unfortunately, the way things are in the country right now, especially with all the defund the police nonsense that's going on, all you're doing is causing police training and the quality of their training to decrease even more. So, over time, you're going to see a higher incidence of innocent people getting shot, or things like the Kim Potter thing happening, just because if she'd have practiced that with UTM rounds and got under and was doing this on a monthly basis for a few hours a month, because you need at least 2 hours a month minimum of training, 2 to 4 ideally once a month, or at least every 6 weeks, just to keep your skills sharp. Because I've gone 6 months without training, just especially with all the shenanigans with the lockdown. And I remember when first time I got back out there with John, I was really surprised at how rusty I was. And the moving and shooting drills, that's when you're walking with the rifle and you're shooting, and the ground's uneven, and so you got to kind of time where the dot is and when you shoot and when you pull the trigger, and then transitioning back and forth between pistol and rifle. It's a lot to do, and it's expensive. Guns are expensive. The ammunition's expensive. And when you look at police officers who are on a fixed budget, it's understandable why they really can't afford to spend the money paying somebody to train them and spending the money on ammunition as well.
Definitely not a money. And the gun is a deadly weapon. I don't like guns, but I agree that's the last resort to use because it can.
Yeah, you don't like guns because you haven't trained enough to where because it's intimidating at first because you know you're dealing with a lethal weapon.
Correct.
But when you train with them enough, they become part of you. And so you become totally competent, totally safe in your ability. But you got to always practice, especially doing dry fire practice. Like what we do is we'll take like a zip tie and put the zip tie in the slide. And so what that does is it keeps the slide from going all the way back into battery. And then you can just practice in your house, putting your dot or your iron sights on whatever the target and easing the trigger back and making sure your dot or your iron sights stay on the target versus trying to pull the trigger too quick. You notice your dot will dip, and that's how you get used to what it feels like to pull your trigger back. And so when you actually are shooting the gun for real on the range, it's just you're going through the motion. It all becomes automatic, unconscious competence, if you will.
Well, then I have to be in a gun range and try to figure that out so I can be a little more confident.
We'll get you out there with the Mocha Bear. He'll train you properly.
I definitely will be down for that. But going back into the amount of years that she may face.
And trains with people that are former Special Forces guys and some of the other dudes that I train with, people that are some of the best shooters in all the southeastern United States. Somebody like me is going to have way better training than your average police officer is going to. But there are some cops that love guns as well, and they love to train, and we see them down at the range all the time, and they're very, very good shooters. But the overwhelming majority of police officers, they barely shoot their gun just once a year for their annual qualification. And so if you're calling the police and you need somebody with a gun to come and protect you or save you, there's a really good chance that police officer is going to show up and not be very competent on their rifle or their pistol. And so if things ever went bad, I'd personally feel more comfortable relying upon myself, but obviously there's always consequences with that, because even if you use your gun, it's totally in self-defense. Even if it's caught on video, you're going to get sued by the criminal's parents that or family that you shot. Probably, and the criminal, if the criminal survives, is going to sue you because you're going to get some dirtbag ambulance chasing attorney that's going to think, oh, that person's got money or they got an insurance policy we can go after and recoup some cash. And so you're going to probably get prosecuted as well. I mean, all you have to do is look at what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. That was all on video. It was all out there for the world to see. And it was pretty obvious. Even the New York Times, a year before the trial had happened and he got acquitted, had gone through the videos that were available. And it clearly showed that it was obviously self-defense. So when he got acquitted, it was not surprising at all. We actually even did a video. It's called What Really Happened to Kyle Rittenhouse. And we went through all the facts of the case. But like I said, I look at her, and as a guy who trains a lot on pistol and rifle, you can just tell she's just not somebody that did enough training, and it's budget driven. And if there's no money in the budget, they're not going to get trained.
That is true. And going back into the video, and we see the video on the TV, Dante was obviously in handcuffs when this was going on, and everything was going fine until he was getting inside. Like he opened the door, his foot got in the pedal, and then it was just like a big struggle. I think I see one of the cops trying to. Ooh.
So the bottom line is he's not complying.
No, he didn't.
So he took off at one point.
He got shot. So that was the moment he got shot.
Oh, so he got shot and drove away.
Well, his foot, I wouldn't say drove away. It was just in the moment when he got shot. Like if you get shot and your foot is in the pedal, it's just going to go. But he died.
I see. Yeah, because your body tends to tense up. I've seen people that have, like I was watching a video of there was a guy who was in the back seat and there was a girl sitting in the front seat of his car and a dude next to him, and she was playing with his pistol, and he says, "You're making me nervous." And she pointed the pistol right at him and shot him. Shot the dude right in the head. I'm sorry, he was in the driver's seat. So I think she was in the passenger seat, and so she shot him in the head. And as soon as he got shot, I mean, his whole body tensed up, and you could hear the engine revving. They were actually parked because his foot slammed on the gas. So I'm assuming that's what happened in
The same with
Dante's case. He got shot, his body tensed up, and he hit the gas.
Which is very terrible. I mean, he was young also when he died, and Kim Potter was charged with the two manslaughter charges. So we're not sure the years they're gonna give her, but her sentence is next year in February, and
So she got found guilty on both accounts.
Yes, she got found.
And do you know what the statute calls for, as far as sentencing guidelines?
She could be facing up to 15 years in prison for first-degree murder, first-degree manslaughter charge, and maybe 10 years in prison for second-degree manslaughter. So she's looking at a good 25 years in prison.
That's maximum?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they can give her more, but that's maximum.
So with good behavior and all that, she might end up getting out after, 5 or 10 years or something like that?
Probably. They did not say much of that, but...
The interesting thing is, like, a lot of people have been making the case, because on social media, they were like, well, what about Alec Baldwin? He killed somebody by accident that was he was working on the crew with, the cinematographer. Shot her by accident, didn't check the weapon, didn't practice proper gun safety, and he killed somebody by accident. No charges have been filed against him. You wonder, well, why is that? Especially in California.
Oh, that's a big one too. I mean, I just know he definitely, yes, he was scared when that happened, but I don't know why they didn't check the gun. They should have checked before, and I think they do
because Alec Baldwin's an idiot. That's one of these guys, anti-gun dudes, that's always running his mouth about guns like he's some kind of expert on Twitter, and he ends up going and killing somebody that worked for him, one of his own employees, because he didn't practice proper gun safety 101. What's interesting with like the UTM rounds is, normal bullets, the firing pin is in the center. But with the UTM rounds, they have a different bolt. So the bolt actually fires, it hits around the outside. So even if you get real ammunition mixed up in there, it's not going to go off because the firing pin's never going to hit the primer cap. And that's what's one of the nice things about the UTM guns. Plus they're blue. The slide has blue on it. And, the rounds are completely different. So you're not going to shoot, like I said, even if you were able to load it with real bullets, it's not going to go off because the firing pin's in a different place. So for illustrative purposes, this is a 5.56 round. This is for my SPR, which stands for Special Purpose Rifle. This is actually a Black Hills ammunition, 77 grain, 5.56. It's special match tip, which this is for distance shooting. And so this is a 5.56 UTM round. So you can see the little top that's bullet. It's got like a little plastic kind of a cage. And so there's some usually paint in here, blue, yellow, red, different colors. And so if you look at the back of these two rounds, you can see the UTM round has a different type of primer versus the 5.56, which if you look here, the primer is in the middle, whereas the firing pin, it hits the UTM round, tends to hit it on the outside. It doesn't hit it in the middle. And that's how, even if you accidentally put the wrong magazine in there, it's not going to fire on you. Which, quite frankly, if we were talking about, what's his name, Alec Baldwin, if he was using like a UTM type of round, they would have never had to worry about accidentally shooting somebody. But you can tell this is your non-lethal training munition, which stings when you get hurt with it. And this obviously is the full match grade 5.56 round. And this will go about, my particular rifle can go up to about 800 yards and still be accurate, which is basically 8 football fields end to end. And so that's the difference between UTM training rounds, which most police never even use. This is what a lot of special forces guys use, military law enforcement that does train. Typically your SWAT teams and stuff are going to use this stuff, versus the full, Black Hills, which is what the military uses. Really great rifle round, which these things are really hard to come by now, especially with ammunition being the way it is. So I'll give you an example, the difference between the two. And so training properly with a UTM style round is the way you want to go.
Wow. Thank you for the gun lesson and the lesson for the bullets, because I was not sure of how the bullets worked. But now each bullet does a different damage. So, wow. And target.
It's a non-lethal round, but it definitely stings when it hits you. It's got a little paint in it. So when it hits you, because usually you want to wear thick clothing, because if you're shot with bare skin, it will break the skin. But I mean, they call it the bee stings. And so it's meant to sting a little bit because you just exposed too much of your body when you're pieing into a room or whatever and you got shot. Those are the kinds of things that help you get to the point where when you go into the shoot house against other people, you shoot them, but they don't see you before you got them.
True.
Comes with time and repetition. What's interesting, the other thing is I watch police videos where I've seen police officers go in with their rifles and people are shooting at them. And just watching a dude run in, I'm like, man, that's not the way I'd go into the house. And then the cop goes in there and he runs into the house and because he didn't get proper training with CQB and he gets shot. Takes the suspect out, but he gets shot himself in the process.
Wow.
All comes back to training.
Yeah, training is for everything. I think for any profession you need training. As a doctor, as a police officer, as a journalist, all the training that you can get is going to work for your experience and makes you a better person for your field. And I definitely agree that the police officers definitely need more training, a refresher every month, because they go out in the field, they risk their lives, and a lot of things happen. Each year, crazy things happen in the streets. It's scary to go out there. It's scary to be a police officer, I feel. But proper training will help ease things out. And probably avoid certain incidents that have been happening these past few years. That's what I think. And with Kim Potter, she literally was found guilty before the holidays, and now she has to stay in jail, and now her life is going upside down.
Well, her life's ruined, and so is Dante's life.
That's
His
true.
is over.
Dante's life, his family's, they're destroyed. The family lost a son, lost a child. Nobody wants to lose a child. Especially in his teens, 20-year-old, he definitely had his whole life ahead of him.
But also, he should not have been resisting arrest.
That's another thing.
Because if he'd have complied, that probably would have never happened.
I think
because bad things happen when you try to fight the police. There was an old song, "I Fought the Law," and the law one, I think it was from like the 1950s or something like that. It's true. It's better to fight it out in court because if you start a scuffle with the police, you're dealing with people that probably their training sucks and they get nervous and you might end up with somebody like a Kim Potter. So if you're going to resist arrest, you're taking your life into your own hands, that you might come across somebody that's just having a bad day or they got brain fog or their training sucks and you get killed or injured in the process. It's not worth it.
I definitely agree. It's definitely not worth it. But also when it comes to incidents like this, don't get me wrong, police like to use their force when it comes to arresting people. They use excessive force. Example, what happened to George Floyd and stuff like that. The excessive force wasn't necessary. He was already down in the ground. I do know for a fact my mother always told me that if the cops ever stopped you, listen to him because he's literally the law. He can do whatever. He can say whatever. And it sucks. But we don't want to be in a position where we may not go home or something else can happen. So unfortunately, we have to listen to them. But at the same time, they should also be they shouldn't be using excessive force, if anything.
Yeah, well, I'm always caught, even though I'm a pasty white guy, and people would say, well, you got white privilege or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, I know what the training is for a lot of these police officers because I got friends, family, and law enforcement guys I train with, and the majority of police officers, they just don't get the proper training. And so I'm always assuming that it's like before, when I get pulled over, I got my insurance card, I got my driver's license, I got my registration in my hands, and I got my hands on the steering wheel because I don't want to get shot by accident if I end up coming across a cop who is an idiot or sucks or is incompetent. And so it's like you want to take all the variables out because I've seen a lot of cases where, guys wait for the police to show up and they're like, oh, what do you want? oh, I need your driver's license, registration. And they go digging around their pocket for it. And you get a
That
jumpy
happened.
cop which got bad training. It goes back to, what's his name? Philando Castile. I wrote about that in my second book, Mastering Yourself. And you watch the video, it's the same thing. You got a jumpy cop. He doesn't know this guy. He gets scared. The dude's reaching in his, he's like, I got my concealed carry. And he digs right. Oh, don't do that. And then the guy shoots him because he freaked out. Because it happens so fast. We watch videos of police that get shot and killed in the line of duty. It's just, I mean, you don't have time to even react or move out of the way in a lot of cases. And then your life's over. And so you get a poorly trained, nervous cop who's probably been working a lot of hours, doesn't have a lot of sleep, or somebody who's obese and out of shape like Kim Potter is, and you're creating a situation where there's a lot of risk in it. You're creating a lot of downside risk for yourself. So it's just better to yes sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, comply, give them what they want, have your all the documents in your hand, be polite, crack some jokes, be nice. I always treat them like when I was in the construction industry, I was always super nice to the people that worked at the building department, because a lot of these guys, a lot of times that work for the building department, had failed in business and had failed as contractors, and they could be real pricks and say, well, I'm not passing that. Whereas if you're nice to them and you're friendly and you ask them for advice or input on things, and they get to know you a little bit, if there's something that's, your steel's not tied properly or it's missing a hoop or whatever in one of your beams and you need to pour the next morning, you don't have time to call in another inspection and wait another 24 hours for the dude to show up. He'll be like, oh, I'll just put that hoop in there. And because the building department guy will trust you that you're going to do the right thing because he likes you. And so I treat police officers the same way. I treat them like as an ally and a friend, even if they're grumpy or in a bad mood or whatever. I just try to be as nice and respectful as possible so I can get my ticket and go on my way and send it to my attorney. Or like in Florida, we have the ticket clinic, and they're absolutely amazing when you get a ticket. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to deal with any of that. You just pay your little fee to them. Sometimes you pay court costs. Sometimes if you got a lot of tickets, you got to do a little driving school. But you can do it online. You get no points in your license. It's worth it. Let the attorneys deal with it later.
Yeah, I
Because
do agree with that.
if you resist the cops, or you're a dick, or you're digging around in your hands or your purse, waiting for them to come, because you know what they're going to ask for. They always want driver's license, registration, and your proof of insurance. As soon as you get over to the side of the road, you should be pulling that stuff out. And by the time he gets to your window, I always roll my windows down as well so the cop can easily see in the car and make it easy for him. Because again, I'm making it obvious. He can see everything. Basically dropping my pants, if you will. And he can see that I got my documents in my hand and they're on the steering wheel. I'm not taking any chances. And I've just seen a lot of video where people have gotten themselves shot because they're either resisting or they're digging around their pockets or their purse, and they're making sudden movements, going into their waistband. And like I said, you get a cop that hasn't gotten much sleep and they're tired and they're stressed and they're pissed off, and the last person they pulled over tried to punch them or whatever. They're already keyed up. It's not worth it. You're going to lose. Why create a bunch of unnecessary risk for yourself and your family?
That is true. I do remember I had a little incident. It happened last year. It was in August. I just moved down to Florida. I was in the Doral area. During that time, there was the curfew, so we weren't supposed to be out there after 10. I do recognize that was a big mistake of myself, but it was just getting food. I was
the unconstitutional curfew.
Yes. I was just getting food with a friend at that time. And I remember the cops did pull me over, so I had to pull over. The cop came towards my window. Everything was fine. I gave him what he needed. I was talking to him, and the person that was in the driver's seat was just quiet. And the cop didn't do anything. But then for some reason, the cop just started to flick his light inside and started to ask questions to the passenger. At the time, the passenger was of color. So I started to notice a change in his tone, a change in his reaction when he was talking to me and to my friend. So at that time, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was a little scared, but I just kept trying to have the police officers focus on me and not that person. And while I was talking, the police officer was looking at my friend and just pointing the light at him like if he was a threat. And I was calm. I was obviously getting all the paperwork, just talking to him. And he just gave me a different reaction, and I got scared for the first time because that has never happened to
Yeah,
me.
because from the cop's perspective, you're being kind and friendly, and your person that's in the driver's seat is being totally quiet. And so right away, the cop's going to go, why is this guy so quiet? Is he trying to hide something? Has he been drinking? Is he on drugs?
That could be too, but
in other words, he's acting like he's guilty of something. Or maybe he was just nervous and he was frozen.
Well, when
That's
I talk to him, he's always scared when it comes to the cops. Like him being stopped with the cops, with all the incidents that happen with the cops and the people of color, there's always like big incidents that's happened. So he doesn't talk and he doesn't touch anything. Because I told him not to touch anything either, just in case. Because I didn't want nothing. I didn't want the.
Did he have all of his stuff out, his license and everything else?
No, it was me. I was the one who was driving.
Oh, I thought you said he was in the driver's seat.
No, he was in the passenger. He was in the passenger. I was driving. So I was the one who took out the paperwork and I was talking to him kindly. Because usually when you get stopped, the driver is the one being questioned, not the passenger, right?
Yep.
That has happened all the time. When I was in the car with my mom will be questioned when she's in the driver's seat and I'm in the passenger seat and I say nothing. I don't even touch anything because then you have the other cop looking in the other window just in case. But I was the one who was driving. I was the one who was parked. And I was talking to the cop, but he just gave me a different reaction when he saw my friend in the passenger seat. The passenger doesn't really need to talk because that's not the person being pulled over. It's just the driver. But like I said, like I did feel a bit scared after the police officer looked at my friend because I did notice a change in his tone, and I don't like that. I don't think there should be a change like that at all. Because I was fine. I looked happy. I wasn't nervous. I didn't even show any signs of that.
If you've seen enough video of shootings, that quiet guy in the front seat, while you've distracted a cop with your kindness, he pulls a gun and shoots the cop.
That could be too.
That's what they're worried about. Because it can happen at any moment. And it's, typically where things go bad for police officers is domestic violence situations. Because you show up, you never know what's going on, and that's where cops get shot and killed is usually domestic violence calls.
No, that's definitely true. Definitely dangerous when a cop gets shot because the whole station is going to go after that person. Like they're going to tear down the city to find who was the person who killed it.
Yeah, I remember about 6 months ago there was it was FBI agents got killed because they were serving a warrant on somebody that had for like child pornography or something like that. And so I think it was 4 FBI officers were serving a warrant at like, 5 or 6 in the morning. And the guy was waiting for him. I think he shot through the door and killed 2 of them. And then it's just, when that happens, the call goes out and it's all available police officers. It's for about 20 minutes. It was just, I was watching because I could see from my balcony, I could see all the police cars going by, and there were sheriff's deputies, there were state troopers, there were local police officers, like several different agencies from all the different cities around, going to render assistance. Because I think the guy barricaded himself in, and then I think he offed himself, or they went in and killed him. I can't remember.
Oof, that's crazy. You have all the cops. State troopers, I think they're the ones that scare me. They're a little more strict. I've definitely seen that, but yeah.
It's always better to be nice. Kill them with kindness, so to speak. Always be kind. Nice. It's not worth it. Because the other thing is if you're a dick, they can come out, oh, your taillight's out. Oh, let me give you a ticket for that. Oh, you don't have an insurance card. Let me give you a ticket for that. And, I've seen where the police also, if you're just an asshole to them, they'll write the upside down smiley face in the back, and so that lets the judge know that this guy was a real dick to the cop. And so if you go try to appeal it, and the judge recognizes that you were uncooperative, and he'll hammer you a little bit more. So it's nothing but downside risk resisting and being a dick. Always have your documents, everything. By the time the cop gets to your car, you should have everything in your hands in the steering wheel, nothing in your pockets, no digging around in your purse, your glove box. Have all that shit ready, because otherwise you're ratcheting up the tension unnecessarily. Roll all your windows down so you can see in your car.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the safest way to do it, to have everything prepared. Because once that cop comes and you start to panic a little bit or look for things, that's when things can go sideways.
If you're calm, the cop will be calm. If you're not, if you're super quiet like your friend was, that's usually indicative of somebody that's got something to hide. Doesn't matter what their skin color is. It's like the cop's going to get suspicious of anybody that's acting a little weird.
But see, that's the thing though. From past experiences, when my mom got pulled over a few times when I was in the car. I didn't say anything.
How many
to the
people
cop.
do you know in law enforcement though? How many family members and close friends do you know that are in law enforcement that you've had these conversations with?
I had my dad's friend used to be in the force for a long time back in New York, and then he retired. But I remember having a talk with it was like a friend at the time. I think he moved here and did the station or something like that. I did
So
speak
you really haven't
about
talked to many police officers about pulling people over
not pulling people over. When I had this conversation with this person,
or asking about which people are they always on the lookout for. Because there's two types of people that police officers fear, and that's people with a lot of money and people that don't fear them. And it's usually the little short, wiry guy who are the most dangerous ones. It's not the big, bulky, muscular dudes. It's always the short, wiry guy because those are the ones that have learned to fight, especially street fight, because they're small. And so they learn how to fight in ways that, a bigger person just is not going to, unless they've done jujitsu or something. But it's like across the board, all my friends and family in law enforcement, that's what they always do. It's the little short, wiry guy that they worry about.
Going back to what you're saying, when I had the conversation with a friend at the time, I asked him one question: why does a cop shoot multiple times instead of one time? I remember asking him that question. Because one thing is, if you shoot them once in the arm or a certain part of the body, they can fall down, right? But he was saying
that's what people on TV think. Oh, shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the arm. It's like, well, when you're nervous and you understand most police, like at least our local law enforcement, they get 4 hours of firearm training a year. If they try to shoot somebody in the leg and they're nervous, they're probably going to miss. And plus you hit the femoral artery, they can still bleed out and die anyways. And so when because the police are trained to shoot in this area here. And so when you shoot somebody in the chest, you basically turn a timer on to where they, in essence, bleed out. And if you've ever seen people that are like high on PCP or something, you could see the cops shoot them a bunch of, I saw one where this was about 6 months ago, this guy was high on PCP, he'd wrecked his car, and he came at a cop with a big stick, and there was a dude filming it. And he was whacking the cop in the head. The cop was bleeding, and he hit him several times, and he was trying to get this guy to stop. The cop kept backing up, and the dude's filming. It's like, shoot this guy, shoot this guy. And finally, the cop shot him after he'd got whacked a few times with this big wooden stick that this guy had picked up. And then, as he shot the guy did this. He held his chest out, and he was doing this as he literally like walked in all these bullets. And I think the cop emptied like 10, 12 rounds into this guy. And then he kind of became woozy and then fell to the ground. But, somebody like that's high on PCP or something, you shoot him a couple times, you shoot him in the arm or leg, they're not going to stop coming. They're going to get their hands on you. And if they knew jujitsu or some kind of martial arts like that and they get their hands on you, they can take your weapon from you and use it on you, or they can choke you out and kill you right there on this side of the road. And so it's like, from training perspective, I don't want to get into too much detail because of the video, but there's places where you can shoot people on what we call the off switch. And that stops all forward momentum forever. But then again, you shoot somebody in the off switch, then, everybody knows what that means. And there's consequences for that versus shooting somebody in the body. So those are all things you have to take into account, and you got split-second decision if you're going to use your weapon and fire. But, you shoot somebody in the body a bunch of times, and they'll keep coming at you. And so you have to immobilize them. And trying to shoot them in the leg, if you miss, the bullet can ricochet and hit somebody else.
I think the leg is, if I had to shoot, I would shoot on the arm or the chest. The leg,
you're going to shoot somebody in the arm from this right far. Here. If you're nervous, you're not going to hit them.
Well, see, you can't be nervous. See, you have the proper
that's somebody
training.
That's totally ignorant of guns and has really no idea what they're talking about. Going, oh yeah, I'll shoot him in the arm or the leg. Like, no, you won't. You want to hit them. You want to stop them. If they're coming at you with a knife, somebody's got to be, I think it's like 20 feet away. If they're coming at you with a knife and you're drawing your weapon and maybe they're only 10 feet away, they're going to be on you before you get your weapon aimed and fired. And all somebody's got to do is stab you once in the right place and you're dead.
Has there been any incidents of people attacking the police? I don't think there
Tons
was.
of them. Tons of them. You can see the shootings.
That's
You
what
can
I was
see
thinking.
cops holding back, trying not to. Like there was one that happened this past year. They shot this guy a couple of times, and he was still able to get his hands on his partner. And then the guy had to shoot him again. I think finally killed him. But it happens. Even you got two people. Even you shoot a guy a bunch. Like I said, you shoot him in the body, it just turns a timer on, and basically you have to wait for them to lose enough blood before they lose consciousness, and that's what stops them.
Interesting.
But anybody that says shoot him in the arm or leg, it's fucking ridiculous. It's not
I
going to
mean,
do
the leg
anything.
is not going to do anything, but the arm, it can.
You hit him in the leg, and there's a good chance you hit the femoral artery, and they still bleed out and they still die.
It's true, but that, like, even though, let's say you do hit them, are they going to fall? They can still walk. They can start limping with one leg,
Yep.
don't they? That's what I was thinking.
If it didn't hit the bone, did shatter the bone.
Yeah, the leg.
But like you're assuming that you're going to be able to hit their leg, especially if they're running towards you.
Oh, no.
That's absurd.
No, I wouldn't say I was shooting the leg. I mean, I've been to. I had never been in a gun range, but I've seen.
Yeah, you haven't fired pistol and you haven't tried to direct your rounds where they're supposed to go.
Oh no!
And so you don't know how hard it is, even just to hit a stationary target. And you think you're gonna shoot somebody that's moving around in the leg or the arm and actually hit them. There's like a 99% chance you're gonna miss them, and your bullets are gonna go somewhere else. And every bullet that leaves your gun, you're responsible for where it goes. So if you miss them and you hit somebody else, you hit somebody's kid. Now
But I mean,
just
if you
killed
have
an
the
innocent
proper
person.
training, you shouldn't be nervous, and you should hit the target. That's what I think, right?
Yeah, but we've been talking this whole time about police officers getting 4 hours of training. I mean, they can't even hit somebody in their body.
Oh yeah, I know.
And then you're like, oh yeah, but shoot them in the leg or shoot them in the arm. That's not going to happen. They're going to miss. And then there was a famous incident last year. A police officer was being attacked by a dog, and he got nervous. The dog was coming at him. He shot a bunch of times. He did hit the dog, but he missed a bunch of times as well. And he hit the owner of the dog, and I think it was a woman, and she ended up, or a guy, and they ended up bleeding out and dying. So he killed the dog and he killed the person, even though he wasn't even aiming at them, just because he freaked out and bullets ricocheted. Could you imagine? It was a pit bull or something like that.
Yeah, pit
But he
bulls are
missed a
dangerous.
bunch of times, and the pit bull's charging at him. But that's what happens. You get nervous. You squeeze too hard on the trigger, and the gun goes down, goes this way. You're gonna miss, and those bullets are gonna ricochet somewhere. Especially if you hit a sidewalk or concrete or asphalt, it'll shatter, and you'll get shards of bullets go flying. You can hit multiple people with one bullet.
Oh, there. Is there anything else you want to talk
So when
about?
somebody says shoot him in the leg or the arm, they don't know what they're fucking talking about. It's total nonsense. It's not how it works in the real world. Maybe with a rifle round, maybe. And somebody that's trained a lot, but you're not going to be aiming for the leg.